Hope that what I said in the last video makes it clear why he's not happy that all the people in the newspaper are saying such great things about him. Because the people who write for the newspaper are the fancy rich people. And Barton Fink's whole thing is that he's not making this theater for the critics, for the fancy people who write about these things in the fancy newspaper. He wants everyday theater for everyday people, and so he feels like if some fancy person at the New Yorker is like, "Oh, this is my favorite play," he's not going to be happy with that because it's not really what he wants to do. He wants success and popularity among everyday people, and he goes to Hollywood, even though he's worried that he's going to sell out. He's worried maybe this is taking him away from his gift because he thinks regular, ordinary, everyday people are the source of what he's doing. He needs to be connected to regular people, and if he goes out in Hollywood, he's just going to meet a bunch of famous, important people, and that's not real life, and it's going to sort of weaken his ability to be a success. And by the way, this is something that we've spent a lot of time in this class talking about, right? 2001 is a movie that bores everyday people, but fancy people at the New Yorker love it. Rear Window is a movie that everybody loves. It doesn't matter who you feel. Regular everyday people love it, and fancy rich people love it. And I didn't show you movies like this, but there's also a lot of movies that like everyday people love and that everybody else hates, and what's an example of that? Well, I guess Twilight. I don't know, but a lot of blockbusters are like there's a lot of snobby people at the New Yorker who just don't like any blockbusters at all, and they just sort of turn their nose up at any kind of Spider-Man movie or whatever. Um, okay, so you have the rocks and the waves crashing. To sort of symbolize LA. And he gets to the hotel. And one of the things about this movie is it's not 100, as like a lot of the movies, we've been doing this all semester long, it's not 100% realistic, right? It's not supposed to be. Barton feels alone. So how do they communicate that to the audience? The hotel is completely fucking empty all the time. It's weird. It's eerie, and the definition of eerie really is a place that should be filled with people that is not. And a hotel should certainly fit that bill. He goes in the hotel and he's just like you see this huge empty lobby, and he's there, and he hits the bell, and it just keeps ringing and ringing and ringing through the emptiness. It's almost like the hotel in The Shining. Although interestingly, whenever you see when you see the hallway of Barton Fink's room, what a lot of hotels will do is you can put your shoes out of your. They don't really do this anymore, but when people cared about this, you put your shoes outside, and then the hotel, as a service to its guests, will pick up your shoes and shine them up real nice and return them. And so one of the interesting things that you see in the movie is everybody's shoes are outside their door. And you see Chet even come by with a cart to collect them at one point. But like it's interesting that it seems like every door has shoes in front of it, which means all the rooms are occupied by people. And yet you never see anyone except for Barton and Charlie actually have rooms in this hotel. There's never anybody else in the lobby or anything. Partly that's because Barton feels alone, but partly it's because this is an eerie, unrealistic zone that we will talk more about as we go. Um, Okay, cool. Right, and again, you get those kind of David Lynchy oddnesses where the bell rings and then the Chet comes up from the basement. Um, okay, cool. Um, Steve Buscemi plays Chet. I love Steve Buscemi. Steve Buscemi's the best. Okay, I'm looking at my notes here. There's also this really great joke that I really like. Barton's worried if he moves to LA, he's not going to be a good writer. Um, and one of the first things that happens when he gets in his hotel is there's a pad of paper with a pencil on it. Because hotels will often have a little note paper for you to write notes on. And when he moves the pencil, you can see it's cleaner underneath the pencil. Why? Because dust has gotten all over it, except for underneath where the pencil was, because the pencil was covering that area up. Why does that matter? Because nobody writes. Nobody in this hotel ever writes anything down. The joke is that people in LA don't read and write. They listen to music or watch movies, but people don't. Writing and reading is for New York. Really, by the way, the reason writing and reading are for New York and people think LA is just for movies and music is because of public transportation. People can read in New York because the subway system, you can't read while driving a car. I mean, they have audiobooks now, but that's the point. So the joke is that people in LA don't write, and he's worried about it. Okay, cool. The people that are in the hotel, by the way, are Chet is like strangely happy, but like a weird happy robot. And he gives you nothing happens with Chet. You don't get a secret reveal about Chet, but he's just a little off. The guy in the elevator who barely speaks is a little strange. The Bible? I don't know, maybe. I heard of it, right? Like he's a weird guy. Um, So he's surrounded by these kinds of strange characters. And then we get one of the most important symbols in the movie. As since you finished the movie, you recognize how important it is. But the picture on the wall of the beautiful girl on the beach looking out at the water. Um, they do a good job. The music indicates that it's important with these sort of very sweet chiming kind of sounds, but also the waves. It's so intense that you hear the crashing waves whenever he looks at the picture. He got the little chimey music and these crashing waves. That's just like him imagining the waves on the beach. Um, okay, and we're going to come back to that symbol obviously because it becomes like a massively important thing. Um, Okay, cool. Let's talk for a minute about Lipnick. Then he goes to the meeting with Lipnick. Now, one of the things Lipnick is hilariously supportive. Lipnick is so happy to see Barton Fink. He's so excited Barton Fink is there. Oftentimes, you think of like the boss who's going to be judging your work to be this kind of someone who's going to give you a hard time or criticize you. But Lipnick is the opposite of what you're expecting. He's like hilariously supportive, although he talks so much. And one of my favorite gags in the movie is he offers Barton. He doesn't let Barton say anything. He asks Barton questions and then he answers his own questions. And he has somebody get Barton a cup of coffee. Lou Breeze gets Barton a cup of coffee, and he never gets to drink any of it. But the meeting's over before he's gotten his first sip, even though he hasn't been talking at all. But Lipnick is this big, larger-than-life kind of crazy person. Right? He's like ready. Oh, Barton, but Barton can move into my house. Is how supportive Lipnick is. Okay. And everything Barton's worried about, Lipnick's like super duper supportive. Okay. Yeah. Lipnick, the other crucial thing about Lipnick is he's remember Lipnick's in the business of making money, right? Lipnick is the boss who makes movies. This is something I talked about in the first day of class. But the idea that movies for rich people are you invest your money in something, they make a movie out of it, and hopefully you get more money out of the ticket sales than it costs to make the movie. And for a lot of the rich folks, that's what movies are. And so Lipnick is interested in making the kinds of movies people have made before, simple, straightforward things. So it's like almost like a formula. So he's got genres. You want a screwball comedy? Do you want like a Bible Roman kind of story about soldiers and things? And he goes through different kinds of genres. Yeah. Okay. Cool. I think I'm done. I think that's all I want to say about Lipnick for now. We'll come back to Lipnick obviously, and then we get one of the sort of key moments in the movie is Barton is in his room and he hears noise coming from the other side of the doorway. Now I told you guys that it's helpful to watch movies with subtitles. But in this movie, the subtitles I think are actually a little bit misleading. Barton hears a sound coming from next door, and he goes to call to complain about it. And I love the camera shot that Chet's like, yeah, he's gonna fix it, and the camera pans over, and you can kind of see you're seeing the wall. He can hear the telephone ringing, and then he can hear the guy get mad, and then the guy walks over, and the camera just follows. You can't see him, Charlie, at first, but the camera moves as if it's following him, even though he's on the other side of the wall at that point. He knocks on the door, and Barton's like, "Oh shit, I'm in trouble." Of course, he opens the door, and Charlie's huge, which is of course scary for a small guy like Barton Fink. The crucial thing about the scene, though, that's really important is, again, this is a repeat of that moment. Wallpaper, which covers things, and backstage, what's on the other side? What's the secret thing? So in this case, you get sounds from next door, and then he wants to find, and then he talks about what's going on the other side of that wall, and he complains, and then Charlie comes over. But the crucial thing is that the noises from the other side could be laughing, could also be crying. And we never really find out which one it was. Charlie, by the way, even suggests both possibilities. At one point, Charlie says, I'm a pretty happy guy in spite of what you might have heard. That means crying. You heard crying, but I'm actually happy. But then later on, he says, too much revelry late at night. That makes it sound like he's happy. So Barton doesn't ever find out whether Charlie was laughing or crying. And we, the audience, also never find out whether Charlie is laughing or crying. We have that surface, and we try to go behind the scenes, but do we really find out what's going on? All right, we'll pick it up in the next video.